What's up YouTube? Reefing ain't easy. Neither is figuring out a good, smart way to take 15 new corals, dip them, acclimate them, and put them into your tank. So I wanted to go over, what I thought was the best way of doing it, because I know somebody else is going to be out there that's in my situation and trying to figure out, how am I going to go about doing this in a methodical, precise way that hopefully will be efficient. And I'm sure there's a better way, but I just wanted to share how I did it. So I was putting in 15 new acropora corals, and they're a little bit more fragile than your typical coral, and I wanted to be extra safe. So I got them in these little cups that look like this, and I was a little worried about just floating those in my sump because, one, if the lid wasn't on all the way, maybe some contaminants would leak into my tank, and the other thing is, there's paper on there and it's glued on there, and maybe some of the glue residue would dissolve in the water and cause issues. In hindsight, this was probably unnecessary, and I'm sure you'd be fine if you did float them, but again, I was trying to be methodical and not take any unnecessary risk. So what you see me doing right now is I'm moving water from my sump into these 5-gallon buckets. I have 7 in one bucket, 8 in the other, for a total of 15 new corals. And to do this, you want to turn off your ATO so you don't just have a bunch of fresh water dumped into your tank. ATO is automatic top off. And the other thing you want to do is track how much water you're removing from your tank so you can put it back into your tank, and it's like a mini water change. Now, my process with dipping all of these corals at once was I wanted to do it each one in its own container at the same time, because if I tried to use one container, I was going to run into issues of I'd have to do one at a time versus all at the same time, or I would have to combine them and dip them all at once, which you need a really big container to do so, and I was afraid of running the risk of letting the two touch each other and have issues there. So what I did was I took my tank water and put it in a pitcher, and then I put my dip solution into the pitcher, mixed it up as you see here. I had an extra 15 containers. I laid them out in a row and I filled them up with my dip solution, as you can see here. After my corals were brought up to the right temperature, I was putting water in the 5-gallon buckets to get them to the exact same temperature. I was ready to dip. Now, you can argue that it's smart to drip acclimate your corals, and in a lot of ways, I'm sure it is. Luckily for me, I sourced these locally. Our parameters were really close, and in my opinion, it was going to cause more harm trying to slowly drip acclimate these rather than just getting them into my tank. And that's just my opinion. I know you might have a different idea there, and perhaps if you have like crazy different DKH numbers, that would make more sense, but ours were very close to the same. So you can see I'm moving the corals out of the original container they came in into a container with the dip solution, and I set a timer on my phone. Now, while I let them sit there in the dip solution, I'm taking the container they came in and I'm dumping all the water out. And I'm putting them back in the same order with the lid, because the lids were marked with the name of the corals, and I wanted to keep those in order. So now I just ran to my mixing station real quick that looks just like this and got fresh RODI water. I rinsed out the container that I made the dip solution in and then dried it off. Now I go back, get fresh RODI water, and fill up the containers all the way full with the RODI water just to give them a good rinse in hopes that I'm killing anything that might still be in there. I put the lids back on, give them a shake, dump out the water again, and then after I've dumped out the water, I'm going to dry them off with a paper towel. Now I'm hoping this sterilizes them and they're completely clean. Perhaps they're not, but in my head, fresh water is going to kill a lot of things. They're completely dry, and they're going to sit there while these corals are sitting in the dip solution. So now I'm going to take that, same pitcher, go back to my tank, fill it up with my tank water, and now I'm filling up the original containers with the tank water. Obviously, if I had another 15 just sitting around, I would have used those, but I had limited resources and was reusing them. So you can see now I'm just taking the corals out of the dip and putting them into their original container that now has my personal tank water in there. And I could argue these are now acclimated. I'm going to put them back into the 5-gallon buckets, and I swapped out the water that was in the 5-gallon buckets with new water so that they're warm, and I can methodically and slowly pull one out at a time, cut it off the plug, and think about where I'm going to place it in my tank and put it in the tank, and now I have time to do so and I'm not worried about it. To me, this just seemed like a safe way to get it all done at once, not worrying about contaminating things or letting the corals touch or not having enough time to figure out where I'm going to put them. I'm sure there's a better way because reefing ain't easy, so feel free to leave your ideas in the comments.